This was a really good story, I thought, from a little earlier last month, but how your voice is being taken for profit. And so this goes down a lot of different paths in terms of content. But broadly speaking, we've seen a big rise in, obviously, voice assistants have become really big. So voice data is seemingly very valuable and very, just valuable in general, I would say. And I've witnessed this where, like, if you call like certain banks or airlines or certain like help desk numbers, you'll say like a lot of them are voice verified. So like I think it's my credit card company or Citi or Chase or one of these guys. They basically when you call in, it's like, oh, we know exactly based on your phone number and based on your voice, we know who you are. So you're automatically basically authenticated for it, right? And all this data comes from basically the tracking and recording that they do. So once they say, this call is being tracked for like quality assurance purposes or whatever terminology they have, clearly that's a pretty wide cast umbrella in terms of what that data is actually being used for and how it's being arranged. I mean, there is a trade-off. Convenience of voice verification is pretty nice, but I don't think people really know what they're getting into, and I guess how bad could the implications be? I think voice data capture is a slippery slope to go down, especially when you think about it in terms of like the deep fakes that we see coming out, right? Those types of videos that could easily be extremely well manipulated based on a certain, voice data set essentially. And you build something and you really don't know what's true and what's not anymore. And they're pretty convincing, I would say, from every single good one that I've seen. So what do you guys kind of think about just voice in general and how it's kind of, I guess, abused or used in the industry right now?
Voice started as something really simple, right? Simple, where they started recording the voices and transferring it to the backend. In some cases prompted, or in some cases unprompted. And I thought that was the beginning, and that itself was uncomfortable. And then it got to the next stage, which is identifying the voice of individuals. Now you're doing voice printing. Right? And now a lot of companies are doing that. Now we are seeing it evolve into the next phase, which makes me significantly uncomfortable, which is analyzing the emotional state of the person who is speaking. And you already identified who is speaking. Now you're trying to analyze the emotional state of the person that is speaking. Now that is one data. And unfortunately, just like we see data aggregators and data providers for various other formats, there are also data aggregators for voice, and these people are selling data, this aggregated data out there for maybe training purposes, for training your AI systems and whatnot. Now what happens when this reaches the data aggregators? And this is likely already reached the data aggregators, where the emotional state of a person based on how they are speaking. And as you have speakers all around your house, and like the smart fridges to your smart speakers to your whatever smart TV and all of these, based on the location of each of these speakers or microphones in your house, I think Google already had a patent or something like that. It can tell who is in what room, who is in which room in the house. Now, they also can tell who is speaking. Now you can tell the emotional state of it. They know your location, where you are. They know where you've been. And as we saw earlier in this about the healthcare data. Imagine you visited a doctor's office, and maybe through the appointment on your calendar, or maybe the location from your doctor's office. That combined with your medical record, that combined with your analysis of your voice patterns, plus we combined with your search queries that you're doing in there. What do the pharmaceutical companies are going to go home with those, right? And this is just that initial phase. The entire development around this is definitely not good. And what's happening really is, some of these companies, because there is a lack of good regulation, all these companies are going and abusing people's data. In US in particular, in Europe, they don't have an issue. where anyone who is trying to gather this biometric data, be it fingerprint, voice print, whatnot, they have to take the permission of the user. US, because it is an open season, and all these vendors are grabbing as much data as possible while they can. At some point, it'll come in. Is that going to be too late? So I think we are at that stage, and from after text, and we are seeing videos to face IDs. I mean, the face recognition all of these. We are going down the wrong path, and somebody has to take a serious look at it, and it's already becoming really late.
I'm just going to pop this up, as this is pretty interesting, the scenario that's posed here. You call a fancy restaurant for a reservation, but its voice analysis system concludes that you don't meet its definition of an acceptable diner and are refused. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine just by the sound of your voice, they can tell this dude does not sound like he's going to spend a lot of money. He sounds like he's more a fish and chips guy, not an upscale guy. And so if we only have limited amount of space, we don't want anybody in here that's just going to have a salad and water. We want somebody that's going to spend some big bucks. So just by the sound of the voice, we're going to deny them privilege to eat in our establishment. That is some scary stuff. And I wish I could say something other than stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, when the mistake happens, you can just blame the system, right? It's not like a human is making this bad choice. It's like, oh, the system made a mistake. We'll rejig the system and tweak it or whatever. And since the system itself is a black box of some level of algorithms and whatnot, you're not actually, there's no transparency in what actually is going on. And I mean, we talk about like your voice as like a binary data point, but I think there was that pretty sure it was Spotify, right? They had this thing where like they can identify your mood, right? So like people think of voice and like just like maybe your voice print and how you talk and like being uniquely identifiable. That's not like the data point that's really valuable. It's your tone, your pitch, your emotional state, your mood, like all those different factors can be extracted from a simple voice sample. So it's not just identification for like convenience or verification mechanisms, right? But the Spotify thing, well, basing it based off of mood, right? If you're, having a bad day and you're like want to listen to like, I don't know, like slow songs or down music in general, do they give you a repetitive feedback loop to amplify that feeling and keep you in that loop? Or do they try to cheer you up? And what responsibility is it of a technology companies to manipulate emotions? So arguably like, newsfeed and algorithm manipulations are one thing, but this is like straight up, we're taking like the voice, the most raw or most direct data points we have about someone's emotional state. And then we're going to find a way to basically manipulate it one way or the other. And any level of manipulation is going to be bad because you don't really want to leave that up to somebody else. And that's, again, a slippery slope to say the least, right?
Yeah, I mean, some of these companies, directly doing it through voice is one thing. There's also indirect way of doing things, like the Spotify example. The music you're listening to plays a role in identifying your emotional state. But then looks like Amazon's wristband is able to determine your emotional state during the conversation. If you're excited and whatnot, the way you behave is different, and analyzing the patterns of your wristband, they can tell your emotional state. That combined with, of course, your direct input, which is voice print, that gives you a lot more information. And Google is anyway doing that, where they are identifying the gender, the age of the person. Again, age of a person based on how the voice sounds, right? They're doing that. It's like fingerprinting in a physical world, just like they are doing fingerprinting in a digital world. These are all a new form of fingerprinting, or in this case, voice printing to whatever, across the board. It's a new form of surveillance that is taking a whole new shape, and it's getting scarier. This is where I think laws have to be in place, restricting the abusiveness of these vendors out there and put the end user in control.
Yeah. I mean, the Google example is, as easy as it gets, because let's say you have an Android phone or you use Google Assistant anywhere, you have to have a Google account. To create the Google account, you give them your name, your age, your birthday or whatever like that, right? And so now they know everything about you, and now you just added an extra data point of voice that verifies it. So I know people with this exact age sound like this, and you have a massive data set of that, and then we're very easy. It's not even like a rocket science thing to build out, right? Like the data, you've already given it to them, and basically on a silver platter.
Yeah. So in this case, what's happening is Google and Amazon are keeping all that data, analyzing it and whatnot. And as the article points out, other advertisers are mad that they're not getting this data. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there is a price to it. And at some point, it will be shared. It's a matter of a couple of bad quarters, and there'll be new advertising products, I guess. So it's a matter of time. But this is really going in a bad direction.
I'll just keep going back to the whole, the financial transaction, it's done. The data transaction, it's only beginning, it seems like, because it's going to hit it's almost like spray. It can go in any direction, the data can. And yeah, I think there's got to be something to be done. I don't know if it's regulation or what, but this data bartering system is only at the beginning, because there's only more and more data getting created every second.
And because self-regulation no longer exists, as that person pointed out from Facebook, self-regulation no longer exists. It goes back to my initial point, where self-regulation comes in if you have a strong moral compass. But moral compass and our people or morality in this market is going bankrupt.